All right. So in today's lesson, we will look at the endogenous growth models. That's from Roma and Lucas. Um, what we have here is something quite basic. Um, I'll run us through this. Then again, advanced macro is not a very friendly course, especially if at all you had a bit of issues in intermediate macro. But however, our job is to make this very light and very easy. I will be sharing with you pamphlets, questions, possible questions really that could be asked from this, and we'll try as much as possible to handle the course outline. Now, like I've earlier alluded to, most of these topics are intertwined. Okay, like the Cobb Douglas. In this model, we already have an example of the Cobb Douglas. This right here. Okay, this right here. So this example of the Cobb Douglas, uh, uh, this here, this example of the Cobb Douglas, we can actually handle the Cobb Douglas topic just from analyzing this model here, okay, which has got constant returns to scale. So essentially, you realize that we will not be strictly going by this by the course outline, but however, we'll be making sure that each and every component of it is handled. All right. So moving forward, um, please you do ask if you've got any question pertaining to the slides. Be able to help you. Okay. So what we are now looking at, an introductory part is the endogenous growth models. So we have got two guys, Paul Roma and Robert Lucas. These actually are very influential in most of the subjects that we'll be handling in terms of macroeconomics. So they proposed a model in which um, uh, basically handled the functioning of the economy as a whole. And so we have got some few effects that to which the endogenous growth model measures. Okay, so we're starting with uh, the external effects. We're starting with the external effects. So we say that individual firms do not have increasing over returns to scale, and so they do not expand infinitely and become economy-wide monopolies. So as we're going to go down, down the course, we'll realize that for individuals as a whole, individuals as they are rather, uh, play an important role in the microeconomic factors, and also firms play a macroeconomic factors. But firms and individuals are, of course, are independent. However, the firms production, or the firms most of the firms activities will actually depend on the individual and on the individual behavior as well, and then the government's behavior will also now depend on the behavior of firms. Okay, so there is some sort of a link, as opposed to the typical capital flow diagram, the circular diagram. This one is a bit more advanced, because now we're looking at the individual behavior. That's why we look at the consumption theories, such as the permanent income hypothesis and the Modelingi's hypothesis. All those will be handling the income, I mean the behavior of the individual. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, then we have the behavior of the firms. In the firms' behavior, this is a very simple analysis, because the firms actually employ these very individuals. And then these firms have got a way in which they allocate the resources, that is their capital, towards these individuals. So when under the firms, the production firms, so these firms employ these, but these individuals will choose either to work for this firm or to just basically stay at home. Now that is now where we try to look at the substitute of labor for leisure. Okay, so we'll look at all those things. So basically, what we are saying is that the economy as a whole has increasing return to scale, so that the returns to capital, okay, the returns to capital or produced inputs can be actually constant. Okay, so the CRS still applies. The CRS still applies for this. So this is actually conforming to the Cobb-Douglas. Okay, this will conform to the Cobb-Douglas. All right, and then I also have to make mention that the way the course brings itself out, there'll be certain models that you may just have to recite. They are actually imposed. They're just imposed. So it's how we find the relativity formula. It's just imposed. Really driving it would be quite tedious. So we may just keep some certain models in the introduction from the scratch, just keeping it to memory. That will really, really help us. Okay. So the features that the endogenous growth models have, so they endogenize key parameters of the model, such as this. This could be any form. It could be alpha, it could be tau, it could be lambda, it could be anything. Okay, this can be in whatever form. Okay, so it endogenizes key parameters. So given that we have got a model, like for example, this one which we had here, so it's endogenizing. So remember, uh, these are constants. This is capital. This is knowledge. This is labor as well. All right, but we'll get to this soon. Okay, so when we are trying to analyze the endogenous growth model, the key thing that we look at is convergence. Okay, convergence and divergence. This is a very key concept because when we look at the Cobb-Douglas, the typical Cobb-Douglas function, we will realize that there are certain facets that will allow the Cobb-Douglas itself to either converge, this model to converge or diverge, because each country has different endowments, and it's got different factor endowments for capital and for labor. So you may find that certain countries, this model, the Cobb-Douglas model, will actually converge soon, or to converge soon. Others, it will not converge. Okay, it will not converge. So what I'm trying to talk about, in case you miss it, is that for endogenous growth model, one of the key features of endogenous growth model is that they lack convergence, and that they endogenize key parameters of the model. Okay, you can have these. Okay, so then they allow S, which is savings. Okay, they allow savings in this sense, and relate policy variables to affect the growth rate of GDP, and not just the lack of growth. So in our analysis for fiscal and monetary policies, we'll have quite a number of interaction between the firm, the labor market, the capital market as well, and how these two markets actually choose individuals, or how they actually select individuals for their uh, production, the capital market and the labor market. So for the capital market, for the labor market, just looking at the firms, yeah, looking at the just generally the firms, how they choose this amount of labor to employ, because they're all trying to maximize capital. Okay. Yeah. So this is just a general overview of the models. We are still going to look at just a few various models, and so I'm really hoping that we have consistent classes, because it will help us to move faster, and it is going to be easy for us to revise. Okay. Um, the other features that we have to look at now is just the David Romer's research and development model. That's what R&D in this sense means. Okay. Now, for research and development, Romer divided the sector into two. Okay, we've got the knowledge producing sector. Okay, we've got the knowledge producing sector, which is the R&D, and we've got the goods producing sector. Okay, now we have to take note of a few things. Okay, so for the amount, the proportion of labor, this air. Oh, let me just zoom this. Perfect. So this AL rather, is just a proportion of labor, the amount of labor devoted to the amount of, of a proportion of labor. This is just a proportion of labor rather. It's a proportion. This is just a proportion of capital, or a proportion of humans devoted to capital. Okay, so we are just dividing the sector into two, because it will help us to analyze really what the effect of knowledge is, and how the goods producing sector is. Okay, so that's just the assumption here. So they're just shares of labor and capital allocated to the good knowledge sector. So remember, assuming that the two sectors is very key, it makes our analysis very easy in our endogenous growth model. Okay, so for the labor and the capital, okay, they will be showing AR and AK. Okay, so they're just shares really. This is a share of labor, it's a share of capital. Okay, it's just an amount of capital devoted to the knowledge sector. Okay, in other words, amount of capital devoted to knowledge sector, and as well as the amount of capital, I mean labor devoted to the knowledge sector. Okay. All right. So remember, what we're keeping constant is the is the labor and the capital. Okay. So when but we're keeping these constant, and see how they're affecting the knowledge sector. Okay. How they're affecting the knowledge sector, and how they're also affecting the good sector. Okay. All right, like that. How they're affecting these two. So we also have we also need to have a certain share of labor and capital that is allocated now to what? To the goods market, or to the goods producing sector. Right. So here's a more visual representation. So we have what? Capital and knowledge and labor. Okay, we in the same Jacob-Douglas equation. All right. So the capital, when we use capital, okay, we of course we expect it to reduce. Okay, and that's why we're showing this by 1 minus AK. That's now the sum of it that has been now devoted, that has been taken out of capital. So we've taken something out of capital for the goods producing sector. Okay, and then we've also taken something out of capital, which is showing this to the knowledge sector. Okay, so for the good sector, here, this good sector, for the good sector, we are taking out 1 minus AK, which is this. And then for the knowledge, you're only taking K. That intuitively tells us that for knowledge, for labor rather, we're taking 1 minus AL, okay, this one. Then for, that's for the good sector. Then for the knowledge sector, we're taking this. Okay, so our first move was to take capital to the knowledge sector. So we're prioritizing our knowledge sector. Why? Because it is research and development, and you need knowledge for research and development. So we are taking part of capital and taking it we're prioritizing capital, part of capital, taking it to knowledge, and this taking it to labor. Then what remains is what we take now to produce goods and produce goods. Okay. So in other words, to bluntly look at it, we're talking about the illiterate. That is the remaining of the illiterate of the population, because these are just humans in short. Okay, these are humans that are going to obtain this knowledge, and then these are also humans who are going to produce these goods. They're not machines. So whatever that is left of capital is what you take here. Whatever that is left of labor, 1 minus L, that's what you take to the knowledge producing sector. Okay, so now let's look at what happens to the output. So for the output, we have with the output, which is Y. And so we put the saving. And so when individuals save, what they're taking to is when they're saving, showing by this. So notice that there is a rate of investment showing by this K dot. This is K naught. So in macroeconomics, I think if you've also done mathematics for economics, when we're denoting by that, we're just simply looking at time. Huh? We're just simply looking at time. We're just simply looking at time. The growth of capital with respect to time. Sometimes you can even denote it as that. Okay, this is the growth of capital with respect to time. At when what happens to capital as it is as time is evolving from point zero to, let's say, point 10 years. So in the evolution of capital in this period is what we denote by K K that. Okay, but in this sense we can say K, then we add a zero here. All right, you pardon my handwriting over there, but I think the idea has been conveyed. So that's just the basic idea, really, over the K naught and the A naught. So the same explanation goes for knowledge. Notice that there is already a dot on top. That's showing you the growth of knowledge with respect to time. Okay, so here comes our first model that we have to sort of keep to the head. Now, there's nothing sinister really about this model. This is just the typical Cobb-Douglas. Okay, it's just a typical Cobb-Douglas, which is having that. Just a typical Cobb-Douglas, and then we've got knowledge now. Okay, and we've got capital, and then we've got 1 minus alpha. Okay, this is just a typical Cobb-Douglas. There's nothing really sinister about this. It only looks fancy because now we're not looking at something that is constant. Okay, so if this was in one constant state, we would have this, but now this is evolving. Okay, this is moving to time, and so our model can no longer become this, but instead it becomes something that has to do with this. Okay, we're showing with time YT, then we've got capital, it's also moving with time. Okay, then we've got knowledge, it's also moving with time. Okay, so everything is now moving with time. We've got labor, it's also moving with time. Okay, so everything now is moving with time. And since everything is now moving with time, we're going to use the basic macroeconomics that we already did. That now shows what happens if we differentiate with respect to capital. This is what happens if we hold these other factors constant and we just use capital. And so that's what reduces to this. So in this sense, we are now differentiating with respect to we're keeping capital constant, and then we're differentiating with respect to these two, because in this debt we are. If we differentiate with respect to capital, then of course we expect this lambda to be the one that's here. But now we're respecting with respect to this, so we expect a change that is arising from labor. Okay, this model, ladies and gentlemen, is very, 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 very important, because there will be a few things that will come up that will make sense of this. Okay. So again, I do repeat that this is output. The growth of output with respect to time is shown by, okay, this is now the derivative with respect to labor, of course. So this comes here, but we're not going to add labor, because remember this 1 minus alpha did not have any other denotion, but this is under capital, so we have to subject it to capital. Okay, and this is 1 minus lambda, so we have to subject it to 1 minus alpha with respect to labor, so we have to add labor. So the basic trick that you just need to remember is that as you are differentiating this output with respect to lambda, to labor rather, you don't have to, they have to assign them the respective endowments that you are trying to hold constant. So here we had labor, we put labor. Here we had capital, we put capital. Okay, that's what we were trying to convey. Okay. Now, when we get to this section, what we've now realized is that knowledge is produced according to Cobb-Douglas that may have the constant returns to scale, and ideally, what we're trying to talk about when you say constant returns to scale is for um, for knowledge, okay, for knowledge, if you use knowledge, there is no way that you're going to say that when I use knowledge, some of it is going to reduce. No, it doesn't. No wonder we have got this constant retention scale. Please take note of that. That the idea about knowledge, the two good sector, this two good sector, is that when we use part of knowledge, all right, you're not going to reduce the amount of knowledge you have. No, knowledge is constant throughout. Knowledge is just constant. It's just, excuse me, just the same throughout. Okay, it doesn't reduce to say the more I give out the knowledge, the more it's going to reduce. No, no, no. But that's not the same when it comes to the production of goods, because the resources are fixed. Okay, the resources are fixed, and the more we use them, they will start depleting in the production of goods. But it's conforming to this knowledge. Knowledge produced is conforming to this, because we cannot have that. We cannot have knowledge that reduces. Okay, it's just all the time the same. All right. So now we are noting that for this, okay, if you ask me where this is coming from, so this is just a parameter. Now this is your first step to sort of commit this to just your memory. Really, you can have anything here, however, it doesn't really matter. This is just a parameter that we now add, because what's going on here from this step to this step is that this is the output for general output for the entire economy, for the entire economy. Okay, this is the entire economy. But for this is just for the knowledge sector, because we divided into two. We also look at the good sector now, where the good sector, where we're going to also derive one other thing. Now here we're keeping, since we're looking at the knowledge sector, or I mean the knowledge sector, yes. We then keep capital constant. Okay, we sort of keep capital constant. We sort of ignore it, in other words, we sort of ignore it. Now, what we have is this parameter. This B is just a parameter that measures that measures this function here, the capital, the movement of capital. Okay, the movement of capital. Then we've got this other parameter. So it sort of substituted this alpha and we've replaced it here. Okay, the movement from this equation to this equation, really, most books, if you look at David Romer's book, which is one of the recommended books, there is little or no explanation to how why we're assigning really the basic these basic two parameters. But I can assure you, in most of the questions in the papers that you can be asked, most likely is that for the endogenous growth model, that is the research and development by Roma, from this output, you cannot be penalized for simply just adding these parameters. You can even add your name if you wish to be, but make sure it's conforming to the same italic here. Okay, all right. So that's just the basic idea. So we're looking at the knowledge sector now, the knowledge sector, not the knowledge sector now. All right. So for the knowledge sector, we are noting that for this alpha, okay, this alpha here, this is alpha. I don't know what this is. This parameter here. Yeah, this parameter here. It's important because there will be implications for these parameters. This B here, and this slant Y, and this one here. There will be implications for that, because what we're trying to look at is that how is knowledge expanding in the production. And so if at all the knowledge for the, draw this. Okay. So if at all the knowledge for the the growth of knowledge for the sector.
I cannot see the screen.
I think I'm sharing this. This is the screen I'm writing on. Can you see this? Can you see it?
Yes, I'm able to see. Maybe it could just be network to the other end.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. All right. So yeah, so this is what I was talking about. So this is the this is the this is the idea on growth of knowledge. Now notice that for these parameters that we have placed, we need to analyze them independently, how they affect the evolution of knowledge. Okay, the evolution of knowledge or the growth of knowledge, how they affect them. Because for an economy that has got a new knowledge, for example, the expansion of B, let me just pick this one. In the case where there is B plus, let me say this, equals to 1. So we're trying to understand the expansion of this is new knowledge. Is this new knowledge going to make the economy produce new amounts of goods, or it doesn't play any role? So imagine an economy that, imagine Zambia that has got a University of Lusaka students. Is the knowledge that you've gained from University of Lusaka going to help the nation produce more goods? If so, then there will be a positive movement, or there will be a positive rate for B, the expansion of B. If not, then B will entirely become negative. Okay, these are just a few pointers you may have to take note of, but of course this will come out clearly when we go down the, the, the lecture. All right, so for now I haven't explained this. To come down below, I thought I may just sort of confuse a little bit, but essentially for for the growth of capital, for the growth of knowledge rather, we are now saying that the rate of our old knowledge, that is our old knowledge, the knowledge that we have, the ones that we already found in the industry, this G, depends on the amount of capital and labor that has been devoted to research, and is constant if those amounts are also constant. Okay, this K and L are also constant. Research is constant if these are also constant. The more you devote amount of capital and labor to research, the more you expect it to increase. Okay, all right. So remember the properties of knowledge. For one, if you devote more capital and labor to research, then uh, to research and development, then you expect that the amount of knowledge will actually increase. Okay, and then if you use knowledge, if you use part of knowledge, okay, then you still remain the same. You're not going to it's not going to deplete. Okay, it's not going to deplete. It will just remain the same, to be constant throughout. All right, but an increase in the endowments of labor and capital will cause a to increase. Please, you may have to keep this and to take note of that. Okay. Some knowledge produced by two people is not twice as valuable. This is quite clear. If you and I produce the very same, and one person produces the very same, it's not really counted as much, because we are just producing the very same knowledge. So some knowledge produced by two people is not twice as valuable. Okay, so positive spillovers could yield increasing returns to scale. So what we mean by spillovers is if we have got, for example, all right, so let's have the movie industry, the Nigerian movie industry. Actually, this is examinable. I found a question on this from some university. The Nigerian movie industry is producing movies, okay, as it does, the Nollywood. But then the factory, or the industry that produces bleaching cream has now boomed because of the Nigerian movie industry. So this company, the bleaching industry, has a spillover from the Nigerian, because without these Nigerian, this would not have an increased expansion of boom in their output. Okay, but the Nigerian economy, the Nigerian movie industry, the Bollywood, has now moved because they're demanding, perhaps they're demanding more light-skinned actors, as they're preferring light-skinned actors as opposed to dark-skinned actors. So what happens then is that the bleaching industry booms because they'll be now selling more of bleaching cream to the individuals who want their skins to be lighter, and so there it's a knowledge spillover to this bleaching industry. So this is a very classic example. Actually, it sounds a bit odd, but believe me, this is a very classic example. So that's how you can understand spillovers really. Even in an instance where one factory, so the production of one good actually increases the production of another. Okay, this does not apply. This theory does not apply to maybe goods that are complementary. No, 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 that's not how it works. Because bleaching cream is not complementary to movies. No, no, these are not likewise goods. We're just simply looking at how one industry uses the knowledge or the advantage created by the other industry to increase its output. All right. So let's just move forward quickly. So we're assuming that there's no depreciation. It's a constant savings rate. This is the formula. This is the savings rate. This is the output. This is the capital. So this is the constant saving rate. It's constant. Okay. Then there is no depreciation. Please, it's very important that we note that depreciation is actually equals to zero. All right. Then the growth of labor is actually also a constant. So this is the growth of labor and showing by that. All right. In the next lecture, we'll try to, because in the solar swan, yes, in the solar no, sorry, in the solar growth model, when we start looking at the rate of changes, sorry, I think I can draw this better. In the solar swan, if we start looking in the solar growth model, if we start looking at the rate of changes, it's going to be very easy for us to actually understand this. Okay. All right. I think many of you might have seen this, or if you haven't, this will be your best friend because this is really important for us to understand. So we might have to see how is capital and growth moving. I mean, how is capital moving? How is labor moving? What is the rate of convergence? What happens to when this goes forward? If this goes up, what happens to these two variables? This is not our topic today, but I just wanted to make mention that this is where these come through. So labor, the growth of labor and the growth of capital over there. Okay. All right. So from okay, so we have been told that we don't analyze, like I mentioned earlier. Some of these things we just have to keep to memory. Yeah. Now, what happens here is that for output, we have reduced output. Just expand this so that you see where they're coming from. This output has this model here is an extract from this model here. Okay, it's just an extract from this model. In fact, what we've done to this model is that
is it me who can see the screen only, or what? Can the rest see the screen?
I can see it.
All right, that means my network. Okay, continue.
All right. Okay. So for the try to share it. See. Okay. Can you see the whiteboard?
Yes.
Okay. So I think it's just the network from this end. All right. All right. So what I was saying was for this model here, the output, the growth of output, it's an extract from this model. The only thing that happens is that we have assumed that there is no physical capital. We have assumed there is no capital. So in short, we delete this. Oh, let me just rub this so that we can have a very clear view. Okay. Okay. So in other words, what we've just done is that we have erased, we have assumed that there's no physical capital. That means that our our A and equals to this, our B, our alpha equals to our beta, it's going to be 0. Okay, so our alpha and beta are going to be 0. So our alpha here will be 0. And when we push this to 0, it's going to be, of course, nothing. So is it 1? Yes, so it completely decomposes to nothing, and this what gets us at. It decomposes to 1, decomposes to 1, so it gets us to this. Okay, gets us to this, composes to, so we have this as a remaining thing. So this is what we're going to deal with in terms of analyzing growth of capital. Now, we have to differentiate further. Okay, we're not done. We are definitely not done. In our okay, so let me just pull out this document. Let me just show you how, because what happens now is that we need to find the derivatives of this growth. Okay, for us to come up to reduce to this growth, we need to come up with a derivative. So in this lecture, this was skipped. So let me just pull out one which actually has a show of that. Okay. All right. Just pull it out from here. So do you have any questions so far as I'm putting out the document? Do you have any question? Please feel free to ask. This is where you can ask as many questions as you can, so that we clear out your questions pertaining advanced macro. Okay. I think I've got it now. So in the next some of the next few lectures, I will be forced to actually write, because the nature of advanced macro, I think you can tell that I may have to do a lot of derivations to just show you what is really going on. Okay, so here we go. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is I think we've already talked about this. I'll try to write here. So I can't write here. Okay. So we've already talked about the growth of labor. We've also already talked about the growth of capital. So they are just showing the same principle. Don't be intimidated by the G or the N that is coming from there. Let me just share it with somewhere where I can actually write, because I really want to write on this. Okay. All right. Okay, so the evolution of inputs. So we are looking at the labor and knowledge, yes. So essentially for growth models, what we may need to understand is that they are interrelated against one another. Okay, they're not independent as one, so they just coexist. Okay, I'm trying to look for the perfect spot to pick it from. They just coexist. Okay, they you may find that for all the neoclassical growth models, the Keynesian growth models, they just overlap each other. They just overlap each other. Okay, so this is where we were, I think. Hope we can all see this handwriting. Yeah, so look at the growth of. Okay, so I think this is where we were. All right, can we see this? Can we see? Do you remember this question? Remember this, right? I may need some responses. Do we remember where this is coming from? This question, do we remember where it's coming from? Okay. All right.
It's for knowledge.
Yes, it's for knowledge. Thank you so much. This is for knowledge. This is a growth of output and coming from knowledge. At this point, we are assuming there is no capital. So in other words, this alpha equals to b equals to 0. Okay, so we've got, it reduces now to only this, because everywhere where we put lambda and alpha, it's been lambda and alpha and beta, it's been taken to 0. Okay, it's been taken to 0 everywhere here. This and this, it's been reduced to actually 0. All right, so we then differentiate this. We differentiate. So the growth of output per worker depends on the growth rate of this. So we now introduce the alpha. Okay, we introduce this alpha, the new alpha. Now this is what is going to allow us to differentiate this growth rate of capital of knowledge. Okay, all right. So we have got B. Okay, so now this is what we remained with. This is from labor, AL labor. This is ALT. This is the what we have the parameter. This is the one that I was talking about. Now it looks like this. Okay, and for this is just the usual lambda. If I could share this again, I think you could see this here. So it's this is what we are just looking at now. This is what we're just looking at now. This section only. This is what we're only looking at. This has already been done away with. Okay, but we don't do away with this parameter B because it's just measuring the elasticity, so to speak. Yes, the movement, the expansion of labor and capital. All right. So going back to this. So we now differentiate. Okay, so what happens here is that we do just a bit of partial derivatives, but before we do that, let's just multiply b into this and to this by every of these factors. So it's going to be b alpha L, that is the proportion of labor that's been devoted to knowledge. Then we've got L of T, and then we've got this this Y that's been divided to every one of these. Okay, it's been divided to every one of these. All right. So we then subtract 1. Okay, but before we even do this, yeah, it's just the same thing. We just keep the state. So this is what just normally happens. So we just differentiate this whole function with respect to AT. Okay, so this AT is constant. This AT is a growth rate. So when you differentiate that, you have B with just a bit of partial derivatives, then B alpha L, then LT, then we've got this Q minus 1. Okay, this Q minus 1. That's what we get. All right. So to erase this so that you can see properly. So upon getting this, upon obtaining this equation down below, here, what we now need to do is let's take the logs of this, and we take the log of every one of these. If you would ask me, what are we trying to achieve? What we're trying to achieve is that we need to understand what is the growth rate of how growth, what is the growth rate of knowledge? Okay, that's what we're trying to achieve here. Okay, so we have to make sure that we analyze the expansion of every one of these variables, because we're trying to analyze these variables, B, alpha, and this. That's what we're trying to get. So now when we differentiate, we've got everything. We've got this on top. We still have this alpha. I mean this symbol here, the Y on top of every one of these. We still have them. Okay. All right. So taking the log on both sides and differentiating. So we firstly get the log of every one of these. Okay, so we've got log of this. This will be, let me just write it for you. In B L T, then that. Okay, then we take the log of this as well, the same one. So this comes down. Okay, this comes down. So this is going to be, by the way, this is also supposed to come down here. It's supposed to be here. So let me just write it properly. Yeah, just write it properly. Okay, so for the first part, for this part, we just drop down this. This will be Y, B, in, then B, then that. Plus, we drop down this guy. This will be this Y, in. We are still holding AL constant as well. This is this one here, this one here. Okay, so we are holding AN constant. So we also add it down below. So we drop this, then in AL plus in LT. Now we go to LT. So it's this. So we've done this, we've done this, we've done this now. Then finally we do this. So we drop down this. So it becomes that minus 1 open brackets. Okay. A LT. Okay, that's what we have. Then we've got in, of course, sorry, I've got an in. We've got in here, so I've got that. So this is now what we have for this. Very neatly done. So again, the steps from here, from this, all you have to do is firstly introduce the parameters, which is B. Okay, we introduce B here. And then we introduce B here. You also introduce the usual one that we have. In case you forgot, we're just using this in short. We're just using this. This is what we use. So in other words, you differentiate firstly this. So this will become Q minus 1. And then this is multiplied on this. This is multiplied on this. So that you have got something like this. Okay, something like this. This here. Okay. Then from there, after differentiating and multiplying this by this, you simply take the log. Okay, so log. So 1, firstly you differentiate. 2, you take the logs. Sorry for my. I think you can tell. 3, you take the log. Then 3, from taking the log. Okay, from taking the log of both sides. But in this, in that, in this, and in of this. Okay, but we're still adding them anyway, because that's what the use of differentiation logs state. Okay. Now what we now have is that for in B, okay, for in B we're going to have something. We're going to have the 0, and then for this function here, for in LT. Okay, for in LT, we are also going to have a 0, because what we are differentiating and what we are interested in is a movement of labor with time, as well as with growth with time. So we're not interested in any of this section, and hence it decomposes to 0. If we're differentiating, it decomposes to 0, okay, because there is no time in all these. So this goes to 0, this goes to 0. But when it comes to this, we keep it as it is, okay? We keep it as it is. So we differentiate this. If we differentiate this with respect to time, there's nothing. Differentiate this with respect to time, there's nothing, 0, 0. But we're interested in the labor and the capital. I mean the labor and the knowledge. So we've got 80 and we've got 80. And hence we have got this function here. This function, just rub so that you can see clearly. Okay. So and hence we have got this function down below. this function here, and this function here. These are important. Now, let's say, let this function, let y, the derivative of in t over dt be equated to some function or some variable n. Okay, let's say n. Then let also this one, because this is coming, this one is coming from here, the n, this derivative of this, q minus 1 derivative of this over dt be some also other variable. Let's say g of a, growth of a, because this is the growth of a. Okay. Now what we have is this. Okay, so like I've said, we've substituted this here. So this is growth of a. Then we are still stuck on this one. So we also let this one become n. Okay, this one become n. So we are only letting this. Remember, this had an alpha below. This alpha coming. This alpha, yes, this alpha is coming from here. It's coming from this one here. This is the alpha. So we only let this part, this half of it. So sorry, I think I might have made a mistake here. Don't include this. We only include this part. Let this part, half of just this section here, this part, be equated to n. Then let this also, just this part, be equated to g of a. Okay. What then you have is that for the consequence of our assumptions of letting all this become, we've got y n, which we assumed, plus this, and then growth of a, which is that. Finally, step 2, the final thing that we do is that step 3, you multiply by growth of capital, growth of knowledge rather. So when you multiply by growth of knowledge, you're going to have both sides by growth of knowledge, you're going to have something like this. Okay, please ignore this. You're going to have something like this. So you're going to have GAT and that. So this is where you end, just here. So you've analyzed the growth of capital. So the question would come, what is the growth of capital? What is the growth of knowledge in the endogenous growth model? This is what it's actually asking. So this is the process of deriving it. All right. Then when you multiply GAT on both sides, of course, you're going to have GAT squared, then times GAT. So this is the model. Okay. Now quickly, let's just look at the case 1, where we've got alpha less than 0. Okay, so we have got the growth of the growth this side, growth on both sides. This is now the model. This is, in practical sense, how most countries behave actually. Okay, this is how most countries behave. So we're looking at the rise. Firstly, knowledge starts rising, starts to rise. Knowledge starts to rise. Knowledge starts to rise. It will reach at a certain peak. Okay, at a certain peak, and then because this is labor. Okay, this is labor. Labor now starts to grow old. There'll be more new knowledge coming, but this knowledge no longer starts to increase. It starts declining. Okay, until it converges to this GA. Okay. Now, there are 3 cases. There's case 1 when alpha is less than 0. So this is the first case when alpha is less than 0. Okay. So getting from this equation, this is coming from the one on top here. So getting from this equation, we say that what happens really is that the contribution of an additional knowledge to the production of a new knowledge is not strong enough to be self-sustaining. Okay, so it's not enough to be self-sustaining. So what we have here is this is less than 0, so it's negative. Like I said earlier on, that means that your contribution is not really having anything because you're not contributing anything to the economy when the alpha is less than 0. Okay, so empirically speaking, this has been done on data. Okay, this is not this is just a basic general overview, the basic endogenous growth model. But when it comes to empirical evidence, for research and development, you can have something that has to do with China. So how has China been moving? So you'd find that for China, it might not be the first case. Okay, it might be that this alpha, whatever this is actually greater than 1. So now this becomes different. It means that the old age is actually contributing to the growth of new knowledge. Okay, so that's the idea. So this is just a general formula, really. but you need to understand the idea about this graph. Okay. This information is found in David Roma. This is just an extract because the book is too broad, and this is the extract. These are the steps to follow through. Okay. For the parameters, the values of the initial condition of labor. So this is so for growth of knowledge at initial position when starting from zero, it's less than growth of this. So when starting from here, we assume that it is when if it is less than GS star. So I'm sorry, this is GS star here. Okay, if it is less than GS star, it means that JA is rising. It's positive and it is rising. Okay, so most cases, this is just for additional knowledge, really. Let me not sound so advanced. This is just for additional knowledge, but you need to just understand how this is working. Okay, how this is working. This down below is just for additional knowledge. Yeah, it's just for additional knowledge. But however, you need to understand that for when GA equals to GA star, when this GA, this one here, equals to GA star, the economy is in a steady state. Okay, it's in a balanced growth path. It's in a steady state. Okay, we will show this by these diagrams. Okay, so my time is running out. However, let me just run you through a few conclusions so that we can call it a day. But please, I shared this document with you, so just have a look at it. So in the second case, it's now positive, and so what happens? It's now going up. It's not going down. It's now going up. The growth of knowledge is now going up, and so this is this function. It's going up. It's not conveyed. It's not converging to zero. No. Okay. It's just going. It's just going up like that. So it is a positive and it is an increasing function. So what this implies in the long run is that the technology increases indefinitely. So what is the effect of the change of this proportion of labor? Okay, so if proportion of labor is increasing, that means that the growth of knowledge is also increasing. That's very true. If you have a population of 20 people, I mean, 3 million, okay, you educate this 3 million, ceteris paribus, you educate this 3 million, and you have another population that has got 10 million. You also educate the 10 million, ceteris paribus. It means that these who have more knowledge than these, because these are more. Okay, that's what this implies when it's going positive. These are more. So it is when this proportion increases, that means that the growth also increases. Or if you've got two sectors, okay, maybe let me drive it home to our two sectors. If we've got two sectors, the growth, the knowledge and the capital, okay, is the labor and the capital rather. If we devote more, okay, if we devote more to is it document inside? So if yes, here, if we devote more to this sector, to the knowledge sector, it means that it will increase. Output in this sector will increase. If we devote more to this in the good sector, then output will actually increase. So the more you educate the labor, the more the growth, the knowledge also increases. All right. Okay, so that's what I've explained is what they actually explained down below here. Now, in the last case, I told you the three cases. What happens now to when alpha is now equals to zero? Okay, what happens when it is zero? So this means that existing stock of knowledge is just as productive, productive in producing new ideas or new knowledge. Okay, so it's like you've already found you're not adding anything sensible to the labor force already, because the knowledge that you've obtained from Unilas is basically there's a very same thing that they've already found there. Okay, so I think this is sorry. Okay, so I think this is really the whole idea of this. Now in conclusion, um, in conclusion, what we'll find is that for we've looked at the dynamics of capital, I mean of knowledge rather. I think we saw that the movement of knowledge. we're still conforming to the same Cobb-Douglas. Yes, I shared this document. I'm hoping every one of us received it. I shared this document. Okay, so for for capital, we've looked at the growth of knowledge with respect to labor. Remember, we assumed this was 0, so we forgot about this section. Now, in conclusion, let's now look at what happens to capital now as it accumulates. We've looked at what happens to knowledge. Okay, we've looked at what happens to knowledge. Now, finally, for capital, this is still in the endogenous growth model. Still in the endogenous growth model. All right. So for the remaining section, we have got, let's just zoom it. Maybe before I proceed, do you have any questions? Or is it still confusing? Okay, I'm assuming people are still listening. If you are confused, you can look at the tutorial. Finally, we've got the movement of the growth of capital, and the growth of capital. What we have is that we have got the savings rate. Remember where this is coming from? Yes, I think I talked about this. The capital, the savings rate, and then this is constant. Okay. Okay. So for the savings, we are going to now take the savings to be the one that's outside as a parameter. Okay. Now, in this case, in the growth of capital, we are not letting this alpha equals to 0. And the logic is the same. The logic is because capital can't exist as on its own. Okay, we need the labor as well. It can't exist on its own. But for labor, we can exist. We are the ones that actually produce this capital. Okay. So for capital, it can't exist, excuse me. It can't exist without the knowledge and available labor. So we just keep it as it is. So in this case, what then happens here is that we then multiply each and every one of these. So we just bit of algebra here. So this is in the inside. So we put it out with this because this is multiplying this and this. Okay. So this is multiplying this. This is multiplying this. This is multiplying this. This is also multiplying this. So when you multiply them, we're going to have this from this equation now. Okay. That applies to this. This implies this. This also implies this. Okay. And remember, we've got an S outside. So rearranging this, we're going to have this. Finally, what we now do is a growth of capital with respect to the point time. So we differentiate now because there we're just multiplying. Okay. So what happens then is that when we reach at this level, okay, when we reach at this level, we now want to look at where there is time. Where is that time in any one of these? So there's growth of where is that capital with respect to time? Okay, so we've got capital with respect to time, it is found here, and then this is labor with respect to time. Knowledge with respect to time, labor with respect to time. Okay, so when we differentiate, then we're going to come to this final equation. But for now, let's also assume that the growth of capital, okay, is going to be this. Okay, and remember what we're talking about, the growth of knowledge. We said it is a dot or that over a dot. That's how we're so when you say growth of capital, it's just the same thing here. Growth of capital like that. Now it's no longer 8k. We get this. Okay. So we now substitute where there is the growth of capital, where there is this, okay, in the sense to where this, because this is k over t. This is also k over t. Every one of these is k over t. Even this is k over t. Even this is k over t. K over t. Okay. And so to reduce, it's going to have this. Okay. This is what you're doing now. It's not going to have. Okay. Because we have substituted in t is going to be n, in K is going to be G, just like we did in the growth. It's just the same process that we did. All right. And then eventually, we're going to deduce to this. Now, this is just slightly different from what we had in terms of knowledge. Remember, for knowledge, we just simply had something like that. Then J of A, okay, T plus G of A T squared, something like that. Yeah, that's what we had. Yeah. So finally, what we have is as usual, like the previous lesson behavior. Please, you notice that for advanced macro, if you know one model, it's going to be very easy for you to just transfer knowledge to the other. You see what happens to when this is going to be 0. So it's just what grows. It's what just happens. It's just what we have. So this is n, it's growing up, and it's going to be 0. If this is less than growth of capital is less than 0, it's going to go down this side. If it's greater than, it's going to go up. Okay, it's going to go up. As simple as that. Yeah. So I think we are done here. Unless there are other questions, please just have a look at these notes. There are a more simplified version of these books. Let me just show you. Where is my WhatsApp? So they are a more simplified version of these books that we've been recommended to handle. Macro for Roma David, Olson and Ola, Mankio as well, and as well as Ahuja. Okay, these are all more of a simplified version. These notes I'm giving you, they're more a more simplified version, as opposed to going to the whole entire book. So have a look at them, and in the next lecture, we'll now try to from this. Listen, put it out. So what we've done here so far, let me show you what we've done so far. Oh, sorry for that. Okay, so what we've done is that we've started from the base. Huh? If you notice, we said in the solo growth model, we talked about the combination of capital evolution, of capital and the steady state, and the golden level of capital accumulation. Okay. Again now, because from this stage, if we start going backwards, it's going to be very easy for us to understand. Trust me, if we look at the theories of investment, this is just 30 minutes, 40 minutes lecture. We are done on these. Okay, the Tobin's Q, these are easy to do. But for the biggest chunk of it are these guys below. The balance of payment. This is, however, in international trade or finance, but we also look at it in here because our consultant does also. So the next lecture we'll finish up on the growth model. We'll finish up on the growth model. Then we'll also now look at we'll look at this. We'll now look at the So when we look at this growth model, when we're done, because these growth models are the ones that simplify everything. Okay, then perhaps we can come and now handle these in just a few lectures. So I really hope that we get consistent. I think it's going to help us a lot. Do we have any questions so far?
No, we are following so far.
All right. I think we are done. We'll send the recording. I'll send the recording as soon as it is done. All right. Having said that, have yourself a lovely afternoon. We'll meet for advanced macro. I think we do have it today. And good day.